Hello, everyone. We will just give it a couple of minutes for people to trickle in, and then we'll get started. But while you're waiting, feel free to pop in the chat where you're joining us from, anything you'd like to share with us today. We're so excited to have you. So we'll just give it maybe 1 to 2 minutes as people come through. All right, it looks like it is starting to trickle down and slow down in terms of who is joining. So let's jump right in. We will be recording this, so anyone who misses the beginning, we'll be sure to send that across. But to start, my name is Dr. Samantha Bureau. I'm currently the Assistant Executive Director here at the Concussion Legacy Foundation Canada. And today we are very excited to be facilitating a webinar on such an important topic, stress resilience for post-concussion symptoms. But before we jump in, I'll take a brief moment just to introduce you to CLF Canada, or CLFC as we sometimes call ourselves. We were founded in 2012 to advance the study, treatment, and prevention of the effects of brain trauma and associated mental health implications in Canadian athletes, military personnel, youth, and other at-risk groups. And to date, we are so proud to have served thousands of Canadians in person and millions online. But today, our goal is to help you take charge of stress and build resilience as you navigate your life following a brain injury. And to do that, we're so excited to have partnered with a very special guest, Jessie Smith. Following a 2013 car accident, Jessie was encouraged to take up mindfulness for brain injury. She learned firsthand both the power of mindfulness, of quieting the mind and calming the body, and the perils, so dissociation and panic attacks. Her body became a beaker in a decade-plus experiment to discover how to modify mindfulness for brain injury. The lessons she has learned along the way are shared in her forthcoming book, The Power and the Perils of Mindfulness of Brain Injury. In 2018, Jessie became a qualified mindfulness teacher through the University of California, San Diego's Center for Mindfulness, and she has taught workshops for brain injury organizations across Canada and in New Zealand, as well as in her signature 8-week Mindful Concussion course. And we'll share information in the chat later on how you can connect with her. But today, she is here to share practical tools to help you break free from the stress cycle and regain balance. If you have questions throughout the session, please be sure to drop them in the Q&A box and we can address them in a Q&A afterwards. And then after her session, we'll have Taya, CLF Canada's Director of Patient Services, to join us and share additional free resources offered by our organization to support you while you navigate your recovery. But with that, Jessie, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you. Oh, you're muted, Jessie.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay, great. Well, greetings everyone from Vancouver, and whether you're here live on the call right now or watching the recording later, I'm just so happy that you're here to share my story with you. And I'm also so deeply grateful for Concussion Legacy to have invited me here to share my not just my story, but some lessons learned along the way. So as you all know, no brain injury is the same. Everybody and every body's different. But one thing that so many of us have in common is that we often have a difficulty or we have a reduced capacity to manage stress. And so that in this webinar, we're going to look at a number of strategies. I just want to lay out kind of the plan for the day. We're going to be looking at some introductions. That's now. We're going to be explaining the stress reaction and stress response cycles. Then we're going to look at how to stop stress, a four-part process we can do to reduce stress. And we're going to look at 5 practical stress reduction techniques that you can do anytime, anywhere. And then at the end, we'll have some time for some reflection, Q&A, and closing. So that's the plan for the day. And I wanted to go on and say that what I'd like to share with you, how when we begin to notice the signs that we are having a stress reaction, that's when we have agency. But so often we're unaware of what those signs are, right? We're just not knowing that we're in a stress reaction because in this society, we're kind of taught to not pay attention. But our stress reaction at times is actually really supportive and helpful to us. This is actually needed, whether we have a brain injury or not. We will have a moment where something difficult happens and our body goes into an automatic fight, flight, or freeze response. We're going to be adding some more things on the PowerPoint in a few minutes, but just for now, I'm just going to be describing this stress reactivity and stress response cycle. And so, first of all, we can begin to notice. It's kind of like our body is a beaker, and in this experiment where you're like, oh, how does stress show up in my body? And as a brain injury survivor, you know that it can be kind of a lot, right? There can be a lot of stress and it can be kind of confusing. Like, wow, I used to have a stress that might be like a 2 or 3. It's not that big a deal. Now that same thing is making me go woo into like a 5, 6, 8, 10 level stress. So what we do is we begin to notice what are the signs that we're beginning to be having this stress reaction. And one of them can be physiologically. For me, I feel that I'm having a lot of changes in my breath is getting short and shallow. My hands are sweating. My muscles are getting tight. And for you, it might be other things like you get sleepy or tired or digestion problems. Whatever it is, this is like the sign that we're beginning to have a stress reaction. And if we have a serious stress reaction, like there's a snake down there in the grass, our body is going to do this automatic reaction. It's going to do all those things. The muscles are going to fire and we're going to like fight, flight, or freeze from this danger, right? And so we might run from the snake in the flight, or we might bash the snake with the stick in the fight. And this is good. This is us protecting our bodies when things are really difficult. The problem with the brain injury is that our symptoms and our situation feel very threatening at times. So our body launches this automatic stress reaction to things that aren't really that much of a threat. A headache, some nausea, some dizziness, some forgetfulness, some foggy brain. These are not major dangers that we need to really fight. And so we learn how we can listen to that and kind of override this automatic reaction and instead move towards a purposeful response. So the good news, yes, this is excellent. You're showing the stop. So let's go over the stop stress cycle, which is 4 parts. And it just briefly, just so you know, it's S for stop, T for take a breath, and O for observe, and P for proceed with what you need. So you have them all there, and now I'm just going to take a moment to go into a little bit more detail with each one. And again, when the first part is that noticing that stress reactivity in your body. So you might be noticing those physical sensations that come with strong emotions like anger or anxiety or fear or sadness or numbness. All of these things can show up that are that sign to us. Or we might take an action. Oh no, we've taken an action like sending an email that we regret. All of these things begin as we pay attention to be signs that, oh, we're having a stress reaction. And if it's a serious danger, like something very dire, your body will take care of you and it send you into fight, flight, and freeze. You don't have to worry about that. What we're learning here is to stop the unnecessary stress reactions that we have. Because with the brain injury, we can go into fight, flight, and freeze frequently. We can go deeply, and it can be really hard to get out once we're in. So that's why that beginning to notice those signs early on is what really helps us to not get so caught up in it. That first step of pausing is so important, and we can only do that if we've noticed that we're beginning to become reactive. The next step is the T, where we take a breath. And so you can do that with me right now if you like. We can just take a deep breath in and a little breath out where the exhale is longer than the inhale. And we can notice, how does that feel? I notice as I do that, just one breath, I already feel a little bit more settled, a little bit less nervous to be sharing this webinar with you. And if you didn't, that's okay, because everybody's different. For some people, paying attention to their breath is very frightening and difficult. It's too much. So what I want to invite you to remember is that whether you're in this process with me today, or whether you're doing some mindfulness or meditation or yoga class some other day in the future, as a brain injury survivor, we have different needs and we have different reactions. And therefore, we can just defy what the teacher says. If it doesn't work for us, you just think, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something different that works for me. But if taking a breath there was supportive for you, then you can remember that and be like, oh, that was kind of nice. So then the next piece is that observe what's going on. Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling angry or afraid? This is kind of that hyper nervous system arousal where our energy is up. Or we could be kind of down, like in hypo aroused, where our nervous system is just like flat, numb, sad. What's really important to remember about these automatic ways that our body cares for us is that it's protective. Our body's actually trying to protect us in those moments from danger. So if we're in real danger, that's great that we do those things. The trick here is to update our body to say, you know what, this isn't a major danger. This is actually just a little bit of cognitive fatigue, or we're feeling a little bit upset because of our situation. There's no need to actually launch the full fight, flight, and freeze in that regard. So that's the observing and the looking around and seeing what's going on, what's actually happening, what's causing this. You might say, oh, I'm feeling kind of reactive because I feel embarrassed because I forgot something that makes me feel badly. And then you can remember, oh, but it's okay. It's expected. All of our symptoms come because we are neurologically different than we were before, and it's not our fault. You just really let that land in your heart. It's not your fault. And then the next one is to proceed with what you need. And you can go on to the next slide and we'll go over that. This proceeding with what we need, I'm going to go over 5 different ways of that. And just to remind you again, you're in choice. So I'm going to invite you to kind of go along with a kind of a guided practice with me as we try these 5 things. And this is just following up on if you've noticed that you're beginning to get reactive, maybe your hands are sweating, your headache's coming on, your thoughts are spinning, your chest is tight, you've got a stomach ache, all of these things, whatever it is, you're feeling forgetful and foggy. you begin to notice what your common symptoms are, and you start to pay more attention to them as a guide to then give you agency to deal with it. Because without this, we tend to just avoid it, right? We don't want to feel that. So we avoid our symptoms. Or if we don't avoid them, we get lost in them. Like, oh, we get so paying so much attention to them. But there's kind of a middle path where we can notice we're having symptoms and then we can address them, not in a reactive way, but actually in a really responsive way. And in this, again, you're in choice. Whatever practice I offer, if it doesn't feel right, that's fine. Don't worry about that. But we're going to start with this first one that is one of the ways that we can turn off the stress reaction and turn on the stress response. And this one is to orient to the present moment. Because human beings, whether we have a brain injury or not, we tend to be lost in thought, honestly. We're worrying about the future or we're regretting the past. With the brain injury, man, that can be really common. And so with orienting to the present, we bring our attention to the present moment, sort of like, you're have an anchoring your attention in the present, really letting it land on the activity that we're doing right now. And as we do this, you're going to notice your attention is going to go off. You're going to go woo off into the past, off into the future. And the practice is to bring it back to the activity you're doing. When we're doing these practices, there's always three things happening. We're letting our attention land in the present of what we're doing. Then we get lost in thought. We realize we're lost in thought and we bring our attention back. So I'm going to guide you into this. And so I invite you now, your first choice is, how do you want to do this? Would you like to do it sitting up? And if you do, I invite you to put your feet flat on the floor, sit up straight but relaxed. Or you might decide, you know what, I've been sitting a lot already today. I want to stand up. I can't see you. It's okay. Or you might be like, I'm kind of tired. I really just want to lie down. Go lie on your bed. Go lie on your couch. It's totally fine. You get to be in choice of how you want to practice. I do a lot of practice lying down, just so you know. It doesn't have to be all. So now we're going to do the first of 5 practices, which is orienting to the present moment. And in doing this, I'm going to invite you to actually move your neck. Move your neck around like this. And as you move your neck, allow your eyes to wander. And as your eyes wander, take a look around the room. See what you see. Maybe it's a room you've been in many times, but you have never really stopped to pay a lot of attention. There's something about moving the neck that gives a cue to the body. I'm okay. I'm in the present moment. It kind of cuts that ruminating thoughts about the future and the past. It brings us to the present moment. One of my teachers said, as you continue to look around and allowing your attention to land in one spot for a moment and then move again, you're cueing presence. I'm here right now. I'm not in the past. I'm not in the future. And one of my teachers says, the present is usually not too bad, right? It's pretty okay right here. Usually the worst parts of our lives are that future that hasn't happened yet, or that bad feelings about the past that's already done. But right here, right now, we might have a headache. We might be feeling a bit foggy brain. That's okay. It's not the end of the world, but it's generally pretty good here. So we're bringing our attention around the room. And then the second activity I want you to try is to look around the room and choose an object that's kind of calling your attention. And I'm going to give you an example. So I've turned this way and I'm going to say red scarf. And then I'm going to move my head and choose another object that's calling me and say black chair. And I'll try it again and I'll say yellow piñata. And there's something about the naming of the object and the color that also serves to pop us into presence. So I'm just going to give you a moment to do it yourself. Move your neck around, find an object that calls your attention, and name it and the color. And if as you're doing it, your mind wanders to the off this activity, that's okay. Just bring it back. And as you finish that activity, take a look and just feel in your body. How'd that go? Did you like the looking around? Did you like the naming an object? If you're feeling fairly okay right now, you might not notice a lot. But if you try it at another time when you're feeling much more agitated and not very present, you may find that it may lend some presence to your experience that will be supportive. So there's no right or wrong. It's just about taking a moment to see how that landed for you. And the next one we're going to do is just a little bit of stretching. And I have some cute ideas there, some stretches you could do. But for this time, please listen to your body. If you have ones that you would rather do, please do that. So we're going to start with just some gentle rolling of the shoulders. I'm going back, but you could start forward if you prefer. I'm going kind of slow and medium-sized circles, but you could do faster. You could do larger or smaller. It's really about listening to the messages from your body and what it needs. And I'll cue you to again let your attention land on the sensations of your shoulders rolling. Actually allow yourself to feel that if it feels okay. Now, if you've had a big whiplash or some sort of shoulder injury, then listen to that. I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do that. That does not feel good. So you can move your shoulders rolling forward now. And so again, everybody and every body is different, and it's around listening to what works for you. There's a bunch of yoga moves that I can't do. I have a frozen shoulder. I can't do all those lift your arm over your head business. So now we've moved our shoulders. Let's move our, roll our neck, but very gently forward, slowly, feeling the creaks. Don't go all the way back, just go back the other direction. Of course, many of us are whiplash survivors. Many of us have many other injuries that were related to what gave us a brain injury. So not only are we dealing with brain injury, we're also dealing with trauma that often comes with the thing that gave us a brain injury or previous trauma. And on top of it, we have these other health issues. So we have to be watchful for so many things and yet care for ourselves as best we can. So we're going to raise our arms, but only, for me, I'm only going to go to here. This is me modifying, showing you that you can modify. Now, so I can do one arm all the way up. What kind of arm stretching would feel good to you? I can go both arms out this way. I'm listening to my body and my left arm's not going up. It's not going to happen, and that's okay. And now just a moment to do whatever activity feels right to you. So I'm going to do some twisting. You're listening to your body and what it needs, and it may be that it just needs some stillness. Allowing your attention to land on the physical sensations if you can. And it's okay if it's not easy. You might feel a bit numb. You might not be able to feel your body that well, and that's okay too. And now as we stop that part, just feel in and get a sense of how does that feel? How do you feel after doing really just a few different stretches? And I know that for me, I feel a bit more upright. I feel a bit more like open and present. And you may feel that or you may not. So that's totally fine. I'm showing you some activities that you can do pretty much anywhere in the present moment. But there's also, of course, other things that you could do that you know that you like, right? Have a bath, go for a walk, do some gardening, knitting, reading, go for a run. The what you choose in that moment of proceed with what you need is up to you. And it's about knowing what supports you depending on how you're feeling, and then really listening to what your body says. Because sometimes we know that what would serve us would be some time outside to savor beauty, but instead we get stuck on our phone, right? We're waiting for the likes and the that kind of thing. So sometimes we can turn to what we would say is short-term adaptive activities. In the short run, a little bit of phone scrolling is not so bad. But if we do it every day, continually, and we miss out on these other more healthy ways to support ourselves, then we suffer in the long run, especially if it's something like alcohol and drugs and too much eating or not enough eating or too much shopping or, whatever it is that we can sometimes turn to that may make us feel better in the short run, but not the long run. This is around being more aware, or what are the healthy things I can do once I've noticed I'm becoming reactive, and then I'm taking that pause, and then I'm turning to what I need. You don't have to do the full STOP, stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. You might get good enough to just go from noticing you're being reactive and right down to proceed. Yeah. So here we are with number 3, savoring beauty. And this has been a really important part of my practice. Is it's not about ignoring what's hard. It's not about pretending everything's great. But in kind of a mindful concussion approach, we're looking at the fullness of our experience. So we can notice that we're having some difficulties, and we can learn not to run and fight, flight, and freeze. It's just a headache, right? And then we can also notice that in the present moment, not only do we have a headache that we don't need to run away from, we can relax into. When we stop fighting, trying to feel our symptoms, it's such a powerful feeling. I notice that sometimes I don't want to feel foggy. I want to have clarity. And I'm fighting it like, ah. And when I feel this letting go of that fight, it's like, okay, I feel a bit foggy, but I'm not fighting it at the same time. And in that moment, then the beauty that is here in this moment becomes available to me. Little simple joys. It doesn't have to be like something amazing and fantastic, but some simple joy that's here right in the moment. So let's take a moment then to look in the room. And you've already had lots of time to look around. Now choose something, again with the neck moving, finding something that's giving you some joy. Maybe just a pretty color, like, ooh, there's a nice purple wall, or there's a plant, or there's a gift someone gave me. Whatever it is that is just calling you in some way, and let your attention land there, like that landing your attention. It's such a relief to let your attention land somewhere rather than be flitting off to, I'm worried about tomorrow, I'm sad about yesterday. Right here, right now, enjoy that color, what your object is. Allow it to fill you up, the color, the shape, the memory of it. You could even touch it if it's nearby you. You could feel the texture of it. Maybe it's a piece of chocolate you're sneaking and enjoying the taste of. So I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and allow you to savor beauty. And if you're able to do it by looking outside your window and you have some nice beauty to look out there, you could as well. And if your mind has gotten lost, it's completely normal, 100% part of the practice. Gently bring it back, kindly bring it back to your anchor of attention, which is your beauty object that you're savoring, the color, the shape, the smell, the touch, the taste, if you can. Probably not. Could be just a pretty object to enjoy. And as you savor that beauty, I invite you to just bring in a little bit of a smile on your face, just a tiny bit. And this again cues safety for our body. Is when we're smiling, it sends a message to our body. Oh, we're not going to be smiling if we're in danger, right? So it's not fake. It's sending a powerful message of safety. This automatic stress reaction comes from a subconscious constantly looking for danger, but we can cue safety as well. And when we give ourselves a little smile, that can help with that as well. And letting go of that looking at your object and savoring that beauty, I'd like to invite you into another practice, which is through our imagination. And you could do this with your eyes closed. And I know that everybody's capacity for imagination is different. There's some people who have a very hard time bringing up concrete images in your mind. And if that's the case, you may wish to continue to do the looking outside. But if you are able to bring up an image of a place, either imagined or real, that makes you happy. So it could be a real place, cozied up on your couch. It could be a pretend place, or a real mountain or ocean or meadow that you know, or a pretend one. And as you imagine this, I'm inviting you in to bring in the five senses. What does it look like? You can make it however you want. Even if it's a real place, you can imagine something extra involved. What do you see? What are the colors? What are the objects? What makes you happy? Bringing in that slight smile again. And then you can bring in sounds. Can you hear any sounds? Maybe the ocean, someone laughing. And smell, do you smell anything? Smell of the ocean, the smell of the fall leaves. And it's your imagination, so you can put whatever your favorite thing to eat is and just put it in your mouth and savor it and notice, ooh, I feel as I do that, I'm imagining a beautiful piece of chocolate and I feel my shoulders relax. I'm like, this is nice. And touch. See if there's something there you can touch. You can magically imagine some velvet or the sand or a plant. So I'm going to be quiet for a moment and let you enjoy this imaginary spot. That's just a break from brain injury, just a nice place to go for a change. And if your imagination, if your mind wanders, bring your attention back gently, kindly, with love, knowing that we're all human, we all wander. It's completely normal. And letting that practice go and allowing yourself to just reflect, how do you feel now? How did those two practices of looking around the room at something with savoring beauty, or in an imagined or just a place in your mind, savoring beauty. You might not have liked this at all. You might be like, no, thank you. I'm not going to do that again. Or you might be like, yeah, I found that to be supportive. I could do that in the line when I'm in a line. And now we're going to do number 4, where we're going to go back to this idea of the long, slow, deep breaths. And in this, we remember that our exhale is going to be longer than the inhale. Again, this can be, for many of us, often like a magic portal to nervous system regulation, where we come down from this hyper, angry, anxious, afraid, and down into like resilient, regulated, or we've been down and that's kind of foggy, depressed, numb, and can bring us up into that, again, regulated, resilient, resourced place. That's what all of this is about. Sometimes we do a practice and it only takes us just like 5% closer to where we want to be. But even that 5% is golden. Sometimes it's 20, sometimes it's 80. Every little bit of that coming into regulation is so helpful. Feeling more responsive, even if it's not 100% responsive. Turning off the automatic and turning on the purposeful responsive. And so for me, I often do long, slow, deep breaths. Secret. I often take 100 of them in the morning. And I get lost at, 30 and then have to start all over again. So I end up doing much more than that. But it's very resourcing to me to start my day with a deep presence. And then I can have more resiliency to go off. I'm a brain injury survivor from 2013. I've had more than a decade of learning these practices, and it's been transformative and life-changing. I would not be able to work half-time at my day job if I did these things. I would be a mess. I would be an absolute mess without the practices that I do. And so I can tell you with confidence that doing these things can reduce the frequency, intensity, and duration of our symptoms and our reactivity. And everybody's different. I had a mild TBI, and so my symptoms were less from the beginning than some people that had much more severe symptoms. But nonetheless, I've seen time and time again that my students benefit from this, learning to pay attention and resource ourselves. For breathing, most of the time, it's a magic portal for me. But sometimes, if I'm really upset, like an emotional stressor, that's not good. Just paying that much attention to my body is not good. I'm better to go outside, nature, have my anchor be outside of my body, off all of the awfulness here, and really out there at the beauty outside. That can be very much more supportive. So it's about learning that mix. So let's take some deep breaths together. We'll do like a not cooling, so like an exhale out. And now we're going to just breathe in together. I'm just raising my hand so you can see the breath. And then we're going to do a long, slow exhale. Pause at the bottom. We're going to do 2 more. And out. And in. And out. And now I invite you to do 2 more, but at your pace. So you may have found my pace was too fast or too slow. So do it up or down as feels comfortable for you. And now we're going to move. Oh, before we move on to the next one, I just want to have you feel that. How does that feel in your body to having done 5 long, slow, deep breaths? Does it feel supportive? Do you feel your system settling this way or, down regulating or up regulating? Maybe you didn't feel great about that. Breath work can be tricky for some people. And I don't usually like you notice that I'm doing this the 4th one, not the first one, because sometimes people think that, oh, if you're going to do mindfulness, all it is paying attention to your breath. But no, I have students that never do that because it's not supportive to them. So you learn what works for you and what doesn't. So let's do the final one, number 5. We're going to do some self-compassion. And uh, I had been learning mindfulness for quite a number of years before I learned mindful self-compassion. And in mindfulness, there's just a lot of traditional mindfulness practices are very kind of like feel everything now, feel all of your physical sensations and all of your emotions, and do it for 45 minutes. Oh my gosh, I couldn't do it, to be honest. I tried, and maybe some of you have tried mindfulness and found it to be very not supportive. I flunked out. That's not true. Some practices were beautiful and supported me so beautifully. And other practices I felt sent me into a panic attack. They sent me into dissociation. I felt ashamed that I couldn't do what all these other students that didn't have a brain injury were able to do. So being kind of strong and resilient in that way and able to defy my teacher because I'm a teacher. I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do these other things that work for me. So I've spent this more than a decade modifying mindfulness so that it works for brain injury. So we can take advantage of all these beautiful practices without falling into dysregulation, into this automatic stress reactivity that we don't need, right? So later, I learned about self-compassion, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can feel the difficulties that I face, my physical symptoms, my situation. It's hard to bear. And a lot of it we do alone, right? I need to spend a lot of time alone. Thankfully, I love doing long, quiet walks by myself, but nonetheless, it can feel isolating. And so, having grown my self compassion practices really supports me because sometimes all I need is to give myself love or just comfort and coziness. And that really, really supports me, especially at times like in the middle of the night. You know, the middle of the night, everything's worse in the middle of the night. And then daylight comes and you're like, what was that? That was terrible, but actually, we're okay. So let me just tell you a little bit about self-compassion. The idea of self-compassion is that you notice this is a moment of suffering. And with the brain injury, sometimes it's like an acute moment, like something really challenging is happening that's big. And sometimes it's not like that. It's just like a broad, overarching, life's kind of hard. You know, we always have to be taking care of ourselves. We're maybe working less or working not at all. It's affecting our relationships. Like there's a lot that we have to manage. And life is hard for everyone, and it's harder for us. And it's just that recognition that that is part of the deal. It's fighting that, trying to hope that we'll never have that is kind of a losing battle. And it's that compassion to realize this is hard. And you know what? I can handle it. That is really, it's hard and I can handle it. And I can support myself in these hard moments. So this is the first step. This is a hard moment and I'm not alone. This is a hard moment, and I am not alone in this pain. Many, many people know physical discomfort, emotional discomfort, financial stress, relationship difficulties, like you name it. Everyone in the world is going through that. And then, of course, a little extra for us. So those are the pieces. This is hard. I'm not alone. And then I'm going to give myself some compassion. And in that, we can, let's try some together. So just stroke your arm gently, giving yourself some compassion. And what's really amazing is that when we stroke ourselves, or maybe stroke your head, oh my gosh, our head has gone through so much, so much right inside and on the outside. You might feel some sadness come because, oh, this head. We can give ourselves this love. We can give ourselves a heart hug. And what's amazing, when we give ourselves a heart hug, our body doesn't know that it's us hugging us. It just feels the love and care. Sometimes we might be quite numb and frozen, and the love and care is hard to feel because of that. Remembering that that numb frozenness is protection. It's protecting us from feeling all the hardness of this situation. But if we love ourselves up, some of that love will come through, and then we can put our hand on our heart, feel this hand giving love to ourselves. And if saying love doesn't feel right to you, you could just say care or connection or concern or compassion, and feel that from yourself to yourself. Maybe inviting that little smile in again. And as we let that practice go, again, just feeling in, like, how did that feel? We have 1 minute to go on this part before we switch to questions. So what I want to do is just remind you of the practices. Um, we did orient to the present moment. I'm going to list them all, and then for 30 seconds, you're going to choose one that you want to do again. Orient to the present moment, a little bit of stretching, savoring beauty, long, slow breath, or self-compassion. So choose one of those 5 that you felt was most supportive, and we're just going to take a moment to do them. So I'm going to look out my window at this sunny day. Don't forget, if you've lost your train of thought, bring your attention back on the actual anchor of what you're doing, maybe inviting in that smile. And going on to the final slide for me, we can just remember that it's hard. It's hard to have a brain injury, and you can put your hand on your heart and remember you're not alone. We're millions. I get you, you get me. You may have a different situation than me. Maybe other people on the call, we're not the same, but we get each other. We don't have to explain why we want the music turned down or the lights turned down. Feel that sense of connection between us. And just know that if you practice these practices a little bit every day, formally, maybe before you get up or at night, then you can call on them when things get really tough in a difficult moment. And I'm hoping that in time things will get easier for you. And yes, you can look me up at mindfulconcussion.ca. I look forward to your questions now. If you have questions, if you're watching this at a later time, you can write me at jessie@mindfulconcussion.ca and send me an email, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jessie. I know I learned a lot. That was a really great presentation. So as Jessie mentioned, we will take a couple of questions before we hand it over to Taya. And I see we have one so far in the Q&A, and it is about your course. So I will just read it out to you and then you can answer. This individual has indicated that they do have some auditory processing issues and is wondering how long your classes are for the 8-week course. Are they recorded? Can they pace them? Anything you could provide insights there.
Sure. So first of all, there's what I've done so far, and there's what could happen in the future, right? So I think it's really important that once I know who the students are in my course, that there's an opportunity to figure out, okay, how can we meet the best meet the needs of the students in the course? And I have not yet done recordings, but I am interested in doing some recordings, especially of the more technical pieces, like the kind of lecture portion. So I've not done it yet, but I'd like to, because I think it would be nice for people to be able to watch them later. Usually I teach for 2 hours, and I have had students in the past be really quite worried how they do with 2 hours because of previous experiences with online activities. But what I've heard actually is that people find it really supportive to be on Zoom rather than in person. You can go off camera, you can lie down, you're at home in your cozy blanket and having your tea. So my experience is that students find the 2 hours are okay because there's a lot of time where you're completely on your own while I'm guiding practices. If you need a break, you can stop it. So there's a lot of agency there, but I would be certainly open to talking to any students about what additional supports we could maybe put in place. And I am my schedule is full up right now, but I'm hoping to run my course again in the fall, and maybe even connected to Concussion Legacy if there would be interest there. But if not, there be I'm going to be doing it on my own as well. So.
Great. Yeah, that provides a lot of additional information. And again, for whoever asked the question, I'm sure you can also email Jessie at any time to chat through that to see if it's a good fit. We do have another question that just came in. This individual is wondering if you have any tips in terms of how not to react to a toddler's tantrum or meltdown specifically in the moment. So this person indicated that after the fact, in hindsight, they can clearly see what they could or should have done, but in the moment it can be difficult. So do you have any tips for this individual?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, I just want to send my really sincere compassion to you because I think having a brain injury and a toddler in your life is not easy. And so just just hopefully you can feel that compassion land on you. And perhaps there's two things that what you mentioned about is in the moment, and I'm going to talk about that. But I also want to say that you can offer yourself compassion after the fact, or just like as a daily or weekly practice to be like, this is really hard. And what would be some soothing touch or just some kind words to yourself to know that this is a difficult combination, a very loud and toddler that has a lot of loud needs and a brain injury that could be reacting, that the reactivity that you're having is understandable. Any of us would feel that, and that whatever you can do in that sort of like formal practice so that you can be as regulated as you can, finding those quiet practices throughout your day, a week that will help you be more regulated, doing some yoga, having a bath, going for a walk in nature, doing some of these practices. Those will help you so that when you have the oatmeal hit the fan of your life, like the toddler has the tantrum, then because you've done a little bit more practice before, then you might be able to meet that moment with a little bit more grace. But if you don't, and you have some anger or frustration, give yourself some compassion, because it's just natural. But here's some tips that I would give in that moment. One is, it's kind of like that thing at the in the airplane where they say, take care of your own mask before you care for your toddler, right? So in that moment, if you can take a split second to like put your hand on your heart, it can take 2 seconds for you to give yourself some support and like grounding. Ground yourself into the present. If you want to look around, like any of these grounding into the present things that you can do to become as present as you can, then you turn to the toddler and you give your attention to them, and remembering that they're frightened, they're angry, they are dysregulated, they're having a tremendous stress reactivity. But because they're a child, they haven't learned how to regulate their own nervous system. They're learning from us how to do that. And so if you turn to them and you kind of lend them your stress response, you just breathe deeply, maybe hold them, calming, stroking, cooing words, whatever you can do to allow them to feel held by you, that their feelings are okay. It's not about shut up now, stop crying. It's about, you're upset, I've got you, let's hold this together. And any amount of that type of warm softness that you can bring to them, it will settle both of your nervous systems. And therefore, hopefully, the tantrum may peter out a little bit more quickly. Does that make sense? Do you have a follow-up question on that?
They did say thank you, and that was very reassuring. So I feel like you hit the nail on the head with that one. So thank you. Some really great advice, and I think great reminder to practice self-compassion. It can be so hard when you are not at what your perceived normal is to give yourself that grace, and knowing what you're going through is so difficult. So we do have one last question that we'll take before handing it off to Taya. And this individual is discussing how they've had many concussions growing up. They're currently dealing with post-concussion syndrome, but now every time they bump or hit their head, they are getting stressed that they are getting a concussion, even when it's so minor in their view that they don't think it could result in one. So they're wondering if you have strategies on how to deal with the fear and the stress around subsequent concussions or new concussions, and if the strategies you discussed today would be beneficial for them.
Mhm. Well, although we can't see a show of hands, I think if we did, we would see that most of us would be putting up our hands because we relate to that fear. I thankfully have not reconcussed myself in any serious way. One time I did walk into a window, a very, very hard window, and I didn't feel good for a few days. That was very scary. But I have had many times where we bonk our heads just in normal life, a little bonk on the window, on a door, on a whatever, something falls, this happens. And so you're not alone in that fear. It is very visceral. It's very fast, right? Oh my gosh, I've bonked myself again. And immediately we go to the future. It's going to get bad. It's going to be worse. How will I handle it? Or we go to the past. Why did I do that stupid thing? I went too fast doing what, maybe I fell down skiing and now I bumped my head again. So first of all, just to recognize that that fear is common and normal. And another piece of it, which the neurologist in the house may be able to answer better than I can, but that when we have a brain injury, often our sense of where our head is in space is not as good as it used to be, so that we're more likely to bonk our head because we just don't have as much of a sense of where we are. Yeah, but anyway, so what to do about it? The first thing to do is to try the stop technique. So the bonk happens, or you fall, or whatever it is, and you do that stop, notice, oh, I just bonked it. I'm having a stress reaction. It could be panic, could be racing heart, whatever the symptoms are, but you're in it. And in that moment, you know it's because you have the fear that you've reconcussed yourself, but you don't know. And so in that moment, you stop, and taking a breath is really great. Just that. And I would right away put your hand on your heart. If that feels supportive, just put your hand on heart. This is so hard. Like right to self-compassion. Oh my gosh, I'm terrified. And I am not alone in this fear. And that kind of allowing your body to know we don't know what's happened. It could be minor and turn into nothing. It could be that we've reconcussed ourselves a little bit, but you know what? We can handle that. Those are the two messages that we want to give that compassion and let our nervous system know. Yes, we've bonked ourselves. We might be just fine. And if we have concussed ourselves again, we'll also be fine, right? That launching into this massive fight, fight, or flees response is not going to help us. That if we can stay as regulated as we can. So we've noticed, we've taken a breath, we've observed our fear and going to the past and going to the future. And so we proceed with what we need. And for everyone, that's different depending on the situation. Of course, if you have seriously bumped your head, let's go to the hospital, right? Like, let's take this seriously, right? But if it's just a minor thing, then you can choose. And if you've been practicing these techniques regularly when things are relatively okay, then it can become muscle memory, and you can go into it in the moment more easily. So you might need to just go for a walk outside, call a friend, do some gentle movement, lie down and do some deep breathing, like whatever it is that you think will help. I'm guessing you'll probably be in a hyper aroused and need to calm that down, but you might just go right into freeze, like numb, and your body is protecting you, like, this is terrifying. I'm not going to feel this right now. And in some cases, to be honest, when we're numb like that, like stay there for a while. That's protection. And then, but we need to come out of that numb because otherwise it just becomes trauma, and we need to find our way back into that regulated, resourced, resilient place. And so I wish you luck with that. I again, as if there's a follow-up, we don't have much time, so I will be quiet now. Sorry, I got carried away and excited. So hopefully that was helpful.
No, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Jessie. Again, so great to have you. And I'm sure everyone here learned a lot, and we're excited to, continue to see how things go for you and see how your book goes and the iterations of the course in the future. But with that, I will hand this off to Taya, who will walk everyone through some of the resources we have for free currently with CLF and provide you any additional information you may need.
Thank you, Jessie, for such an informative and engaging, relatable session. I know I learned a lot, and I hope that others did as well. So as mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, my name is Taya. I'm the Director of Patient Services at CLF Canada. Before we close out today, I just wanted to share some of our resources. So we have the CLF Helpline and Support Line, which supports Canadians by providing personalized help to those struggling with the outcomes of brain injury. If you are a loved one are seeking any guidance on how to choose the right doctor, struggling with lingering symptoms, or have any other specific questions, submit your request at the links in the chat. and a dedicated member of our team will get in touch with you as soon as possible. In addition to that, we also host weekly and monthly support group meetings on Zoom for patients and caregivers navigating persistent post-concussion symptoms and suspected chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And to view the meeting days and times, you can click the links in the chat as well. We also have a one-on-one program. So if you're a patient or caregiver looking for some one-on-one support, we offer one-on-one connections to trained volunteers who have been there and are looking to provide some support. There is a link in the chat to book a call to start the intake process for that as well. And you can follow us on our social media accounts listed here on the screen, and those links will also be in the chat. On behalf of CLF Canada, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Jessie, for leading us. If you want to be the first to learn about our future events, sign up for our newsletter using the link in the chat, and you'll also receive a recording of today's session to the email that you've registered with, and feel free to share it with any family members or friends who you think may benefit. Thank you, and have a great rest of the day, guys.